evening everyone, welcome to the shooting channel. I hope you've all had a brilliant bank holiday and were able to get out and about. We'll talk about that in a moment or two. But first let me introduce my guest for this evening's show, Mr. John Martin, who is chairman of the Clay Pigeon Shooting Association. Here's John.
We are all, quite literally, the future of our sport.
And you'll be hearing more from him. So, Basque and their initiative, the Green Shoots Mapping. Essentially they're working on three principles of map it, seen it, bagged it. Let's just focus on a couple of these. You can record and plan all sorts on there. It's a fantastic database and I would recommend it to anybody who's a member, and if you're not a member, get joining, basically. So, this is what I'd like to talk about today. Look at that. Easy identifiable by yellow tips on the legs, this picture for example, and a black velvety thorax. I'll put a link in the description, and indeed a description in the link. You can even report nuisance native plants on the site, like Japanese knotweed, and even rhododendron. So there we have it guys, Green Shoots Mapping. Definitely give it a go. Now before I hand over to the CPSA, I'd like to wish a very happy birthday to Neil Parish MP, who is a supporter of ours. I'd like to draw your attention to this, which I perhaps should have mentioned earlier, and time is running out, but if you've got a couple of days and you've got a spare photo that you thought was pretty good, that you never really got to share, maybe now's the time. It doesn't have to be one you took yesterday, so have a look, see what you've got and think about that. Just a thought. So now it's time to hand you over to my esteemed guest, chairman of the Clay Pigeon Shooting Association, Mr. John Martin.
Brief rundown of recent developments now that shooting has recommenced. So towards the middle of last month it became evident that the restrictions on some outdoor activities and some sporting venues were likely to be reduced. The shooting organisations increased their lobbying of government and of police forces for assurances that shooting would be included in those activities. Much of this lobbying was focused through the British Shooting Sports Council, and Graham Downing, its secretary, did a video on this channel a couple of weeks ago. So if you wind back and find that, he'll fill you in far greater detail on everything that BSSC does for the benefit of shooting as a whole. Now we're in a slightly different position to most sports, because after all you don't need a licence to throw your golf clubs in the back of your car and drive to a golf club. So we sought cast iron assurances from government, from the police force and from licensing authorities that shooters would legally be entitled to recommence their sport. And on the 14th of May we received all the assurances we at the CPSA considered we required in order to inform our members that shooting could safely recommence. I don't think it's ever happened before, but we have specific instructions from Nigel Huddleston, MP, who's the Minister for Sport, amongst other things, specifically stating that shooting can recommence. And the National Police Chiefs Council have issued instructions to all licensing authorities, again stating that shooting can recommence, vermin control can recommence, as can deer management. Now even before these assurances were received, many grounds throughout the country were working hard to change the way they operated, putting in restrictions, making sure that they were adhering to all of the latest government guidance when it came to opening in the not too distant future. The CPSA issued guidance to grounds and to shooters, and some police forces have in turn directed shooters to the CPSA guidance as the national governing body. Many grounds are now open, and those that aren't are planning to do so in the next few weeks. And without exception, in my experience, they all recognise the importance of adhering to the specifics of the government recommendations when it comes to outdoor activities and the number of people who can meet up and the circumstances that they can meet. Some argue that we could go straight back to normal because we're only talking about squads of 5 or 6, and that could easily be achieved whilst ensuring that social distancing was employed. Now that might be the case, and I have my own view, but we have a tentative restart of shooting, and shooting is probably the most disciplined sport you can think of, so let's play it by the book. Let's follow the guidelines scrupulously. It won't be long between 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 as recommendations and restrictions are reduced. At the moment, they are quite literally 2 shooters maximum with social distancing employed. The motto of the CPSA is the future of our sport. So let's go out and shoot, but let's do it properly and let's do it safely. Because what we do now will influence how long it is before we can get back to normal shooting. So in that respect, we are all, quite literally, the future of our sport.
Thank you, John, and thank you to everybody who's been watching and tuning in. I hope that you find it helpful. We've got lots more coming up as we approach the complete end of lockdown. And remember, we've got the feature on Thursday from David, who will be covering shooting tips, gun reviews, and everything else down at the Oxford Gun Company, which is now open for business. I'm Alex Sayer. This is the Shooting Channel. I'll see you next Newsday. Thank you.